Hello, hello. Today we're going to talk a little bit about heredity, and heredity is the passing down of traits from parents to offspring. The original founder of heredity and how this all happens was Gregor Mendel, and he was an Austrian monk who studied peas. And the reason why he studied peas is because they grew really fast, and he could easily pick out one trait in peas and look how it changed from generation to generation. And so we're going to talk about some of the things that Gregor Mendel found for us. We know now that there is a certain segment of DNA that codes for a trait or characteristic, and we talked about that when we talked about transcription and translation, how we have a certain section of DNA that codes for something like eye color or hair color or height or feet size, and so we call those things genes. Now, we have a section of DNA that codes for eye color, but that certain gene, that certain section of DNA can code for many different versions of eye color. That's called an allele. A-L-L-E-L-E. It's like this. It's a hot summer day, and I decide I need frozen yogurt because it's good, right? And so I go up to Chili Billy's, the local frozen yogurt place, and I walk in, and there's a wall of frozen yogurt, right? I decided I want frozen yogurt. No matter what, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to get frozen yogurt. But there's different flavors or versions of frozen yogurt, right? There's cheesecake, and there's vanilla, and there's chocolate, and there's butterscotch, and there's all these different kinds of frozen yogurt, right? But it's all frozen yogurt. Just like our gene, no matter what, is going to be eye color, but there can be different versions of that gene for eye color, like brown eyes or blue eyes or green eyes or gray eyes, right? And so there are different types of those genes. Now we can describe those alleles or those versions in different ways. The first way that we can describe them is through phenotype. Phenotype is what that version looks like. So a phenotype would be tall or small or brown or red or wide or thin, right? So those are all ways that we could describe looks-wise what those alleles could be. Now we can describe them another way besides looks, and that's using letters. And when we use letters to describe those alleles or those versions, it's called a genotype. So genotypes will always have two letters, and they could be capital, capital, capital lowercase, or lowercase, lowercase. So there's three different ways we can describe these genotypes. If we have a capital, capital, or a lowercase, lowercase, in our genotype, so they're the same case, two capitals or two lowercases, we call that homozygous. So homozygous is when we have two capitals or two lowercases. Homo means same in science. Well, just like homo means same, hetero means different. So if we have a genotype that has a capital and a lowercase, we'll call it heterozygous. All right, so we know now that we have flavors of genes, and we can express them as a phenotype, what they look like, and a genotype, which is letters. There's one other piece of information we need to move on, and that's that when we have a capital letter in our genotype, it means that that trait or characteristic is going to be the controlling characteristic. It's more powerful, it's in charge, it's seen more often. And so if we look around at humans, we can see that some characteristics are seen more often. So you will see more often brown hair or brown eyes. So those are traits that are called dominant. Dominant traits are capital, they're seen more often, and they're more powerful. That means that some traits are going to be the ones that are kind of bullied and kind of controlled. They're less powerful and they're seen left often. Those will have lowercase letters in the genotype, and those are called recessive. Alright, so we have some genes or some alleles that are more powerful than other alleles that are recessive and seen less often. And so what we can do is we can do something called a Punnett square. And that will help us determine which alleles will be passed on from parents to offspring. And so a Punnett square looks like this guy. It kind of looks like a 4-square grid, that little game you played when you were little. And this is how it's going to be set up. We have our square, and at the top are going to be Dad's genotype. So Dad is going to have 2 letters at the top. On the side is always going to be Mom's genotype. And she is going to have 2 letters in her genotype. And so what's going to happen is we're going to pull this letter to this box, and this letter to this box, and this letter to this one, and this one. This one will be pulled down, and this one will be pulled down. And so what will happen is in each box, we're going to have 2 different letters. Now the letters that you choose to use in your genotype should describe the recessive trait. So the trait seen less often is the letter that you're going to use in your Punnett square, And so this Punnett square is going to be used to set up a problem. And so here's an example of a problem that we could use a Punnett square with. So it says, Hazel, my female cat, has long hair, which is a recessive trait. So my first piece of information I can pull out is that long hair is a recessive trait. Since long hair is the recessive trait, I know I'm going to use the letter L in my Punnett square. It says, what are the chances her kittens will have long hair if she's bred with a heterozygous short-haired cat? All right, so if Hazel is recessive, it means that she'll have lowercase letters. And if she is recessive, if she has the recessive trait, that means she can't have any dominant alleles, which means that she will not have any capital letters in her genotype. So since we're using L, and here's Hazel, the mama cat, I'm going to put 2 small L's right here, and then I can carry those L's over to the boxes. This one moves here and here, this one will move here and here. Alright, so now we need to figure out what the dad will be. The dad is going to be heterozygous, and if you remember, heterozygous means that he's going to have 1 capital and 1 lowercase. It says that his phenotype is short-haired, which makes sense because he does have that dominant characteristic of short hair, which will overpower the recessive trait. So I'm going to put the dad as being capital L here and lowercase l here. Whenever you have a capital, you're going to want to put it on the left side of the genotype. So here is going to, this L is going to move down, this L is going to move down here. Now this lowercase l is going to move down here, and this L is going to move down here. And so it says, what are the chances her kitten will have long hair? And so what we can do is we can see that 2 out of 4 of the boxes are going to be LL, which is long hair phenotype, and 2 out of 4 of the boxes are going to have capital L lowercase l, which will be the short hair type. And so what are the chances her offspring will have long hair? 2 out of 4 we know is 50% chance. So that's how you do a Punnett square. Sometimes problems are going to get a little bit trickier where they only give you part of the information, and so you have to figure out all these essential things in order to solve the problem. A little bit tricky, but I know you guys can do it. As always, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm here to help. Thanks, guys.